Fine, you're a Christian and you've
Yes.
lived in the Middle East. What was your experience?
Yeah, um, my first experience in the Middle East was actually Africa, Middle East was in Egypt. But that was my first experience in a Muslim country. That was before I joined the military. I was 19 at the time, and I was just traveling the world as a backpacker at that time in my life. I went to Egypt for 3 days to go see the pyramids, and I had never been to a Muslim country, so I didn't know what to expect. Growing up in a Christian community, a Christian household in America, in the Midwest. You hear all the bad things from the media about Muslims, about the Middle East, about how it's so dangerous over there, how they hate Christians, how they supposedly hate everybody else who's not Muslim. My first experience in the Middle East was great in Egypt. Um, I had a great experience with the locals, with the people. I had a taxi driver who I paid him probably $40 for the day, and he drove me literally the entire day from the morning till the sun went down. He took me to the pyramids. Um, he was like feeding me cigarettes in his car all day. He took me and got lunch together. But I had a cross around my neck, and he obviously knew I was a Christian, and he was super nice. So that was really eye opening for me at the time. But that was a short trip. So fast forward a few years later, I was in the Marine Corps. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. I had 2 different jobs while I was in. I was an infantryman, and then I was also a Marine security guard. So my first job in the Marine Corps was to basically do the security for US embassies overseas. My first post was in Tokyo, Japan, and then after that, my next post was in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And so I had always wanted to go to the Middle East and experience it more. Um, and so I requested a couple posts after Japan to go to the Middle East, and I got Saudi Arabia. So when I went there, I had really I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know much about Saudi Arabia. I really didn't know much about Riyadh at all. So I started doing my research beforehand. And when I got there, I knew essentially nothing about Islam other than what I thought I knew, which was what the media fed me and what people back home in America would tell me about Muslims. I spent 14 months there. It was one of the best times of my life. Uh, I had some amazing friends, both Americans at the embassy and both locals. The thing about Riyadh is it's not just Saudis that live there. It's a melting pot of a lot of different expats from all over the world because you have a lot of business there. You have the diplomatic community there. So I met a lot of Muslims from not just Saudi Arabia, but Sudan and all over the Muslim world. So I got exposed to all these different Muslims from these different parts of the world. And that was the first time I really learned about Islam and what it really was. We had 2 drivers at the embassy. The way it works is when we're out at post, we don't have our own vehicles. And so we have drivers that would take us off compound if we had to go somewhere. And so both of our drivers were Muslims. One was from Sudan, one was from Pakistan. They were both Muslim. They'd been driving the Marines for decades, been doing this for a long time. And when I showed up, I was a Christian. And I would be driving around with them and they would just talk to me about Islam because I would have questions because they're Muslim. I'm in a Muslim country and I have questions. And that was the first time when I realized that we have so many similarities. Like Christians and Muslims have more similarities than we don't. So yeah, I learned about basically like the history of Islam and how our Old Testament lines up with your guys's history of the ancient world and of Moses and of all the stories that we have in the Old Testament, pretty much the same. And of the prophets and all of that, I learned that Jesus was an important figure. Had no clue. I had no clue that Muslims held Jesus to such a high standard and um, believed that he was the Messiah, believed that he came from the Virgin Mary, and all of that stuff. I had no clue. So it was a great experience for me to learn about Islam, and I cultivated really, really good, like really, really good close relationships with Muslims there. I've got a picture of my drivers on my desk right now. This is Assad.
Wow.
He's one of my best friends. This guy, he's the type of guy that would take a bullet for me, and I would do the same for him. He's a Muslim, I'm a Christian. We never had any issues with our religion. It's just a brotherhood. a bond that we had a really good relationship. And so, yeah, that was my first experience to Islam and the Muslim world and the Middle East, and I had a great time.
Was there never a part where you felt somewhat unsafe because of your religion?
No, dude, no, no, no. So that's the thing about the Middle East too. Is sure, there's some dangerous parts in the Middle East, but when like I was just in Dubai. I've been to Dubai a couple times. Dubai is a different story, kind of because it's so big and growing, and it's different than a lot of places in the Middle East. But a lot of places in the Middle East, even Saudi Arabia, are extremely safe. The culture is completely different. You don't have petty crimes there. Like in Saudi Arabia, you're not going to get robbed. You can leave your purse or your bag on a bench and walk away, go to the bathroom. Nobody's going to steal it. Nobody's going to take it. Nobody's going to steal your bike. Nobody's going to do it petty crimes like that. That's what I noticed there. Um, and the culture is just completely different. When you're here in America in the West, you have so many more issues that you don't see in the Middle East. Sure, you have some different issues in the Middle East that you don't see here, but petty crimes, homelessness, theft, robberies, assaults. I never once felt for my safety when I was in Saudi Arabia or most of the places in the Middle East that I visited.
Yeah, I lived in Riyadh for 3 months, and I was like recently a Muslim. So like nobody there would have ever known I was a Muslim. I was a white man, and I'd walk around 1 o'clock at night in the most random places in Riyadh, and I felt completely safe.
Yeah, I feel more safe in Riyadh than I do. I live in Washington, D.C. I feel more safe there than a lot of neighborhoods here and a lot of neighborhoods in Chicago or New York or a lot of major cities in America.